Welcome to my channel, Polymath. For many years, China has been actively seeking peaceful reunification with Taiwan to reduce the cost of achieving the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. However, the hope for peaceful reunification is becoming increasingly slim. If the current trend continues, it may ultimately result in the mainland having to resort to military force to resolve the Taiwan issue. To achieve this, the Chinese army would first have to face the challenge of conducting amphibious landing operations, which is considered one of the most complex and difficult forms of modern warfare. Historically, the attacking force in amphibious landing operations often paid a heavy price, regardless of victory or defeat. The Chinese army has limited experience in this type of operation, and some previous attempts, such as the battles for Kinmen, Datun, and Nansha Islands, have resulted in tragic experiences that continue to haunt the Chinese army to this day. Compared to Kinmen Island, the difficulty of landing on Taiwan Island is clearly much greater, as it is 240 times larger. In addition, the coasts suitable for landing on Taiwan Island are limited, mostly concentrated on the west coast facing the mainland, and the mountainous terrain is not conducive to the immediate deployment and expansion of troops after landing. Since the Chiang Kai-shek's army retreated to Taiwan in 1949, they have a high emphasis on anti-landing operations. In the 21st century, the Taiwanese army has established the principle of using air and naval power as a priority for joint operations, with the goal of pushing back the enemy beyond the border. Taiwanese has army for each branch of the land, sea, and air forces to perform their respective roles and jointly execute anti-landing operations. The Navy will mainly be responsible for air defense in the Taiwan Strait and for targeting the Chinese Army's landing fleet. The Air Force will primarily be responsible for striking key targets along the mainland's coast and landing forces, as well as conducting air defense missions over Taiwan. The Army will mainly be responsible for defending Taiwan Island and its outlying islands of Kinmen, Matsu, and Penghu, and will coordinate with the Navy and Air Force in executing anti-landing operations, according to the guiding principles of pushing back the enemy beyond the border, striking the enemy halfway across, destroying the enemy on the beachhead, and wiping out the enemy in the city. Taiwan's anti-landing operations are generally divided into 4 stages. First, preparing for the battle. Second, intercepting the enemy's landing operations at sea. Third, fighting on the beachhead. And fourth, launching a full-scale counterattack. The first stage is to make a preemptive strike. The so-called preemptive strike is actually a strategy of launching an attack on the Chinese army during the preparation stage of their landing operations. The premise of a preemptive strike is reliable intelligence support. Currently, Taiwan has established a relatively complete 3-dimensional reconnaissance and early warning system, which can monitor the area within a radius of 600 kilometers around the Taiwan island for 24 hours a day. Basically, it can cover military airports and other military targets in Fujian, Zhejiang, Jiangxi, and Guangdong. Once signs of large-scale forces gathering along the coast are discovered, Taiwan's F-16, Mirage 2000, and IDF fighter jets will carry Harpoon anti-ship missiles, Wenjian remote attack weapon systems, and AGM-158 cruise missiles, and other air-to-surface weapons to launch proactive attacks on the Chinese ports, ships, airports, communication systems, command centers, landing ships, and logistics supply facilities. At the same time, Taiwan's surface warships and garrisons on outlying islands such as Taiwan, Kinmen, and Matsu will also use Harpoon and HF-23 anti-ship missiles and the Yunfeng cruise missile, which is currently being tested and equipped to strike these targets. According to Taiwanese media, the Yunfeng cruise missile is one of the strategic weapons designed by Taiwan to deter the northern and central regions of the mainland. It is said to be able to penetrate the China's air defense system and attack the Three Gorges Dam in Beijing, the capital city. The flight speed of the Yunfeng cruise missile is between 2.5 and 3 Mach, and the range of the later models can reach about 1,500–2,000 kilometers. If this missile is mass-produced and equipped by the Taiwanese army, it may pose a certain threat to the coastal and inland regions of the China mainland. In addition to conventional tactics, Taiwan's military also use special operations teams and squad to launch harassing attacks on important targets. For example, sending out underwater demolition teams to swim to the mainland coast and carry out explosive mining to destroy Chinese ports, docks, and transport vehicles. Phase 2, Transit Interception and Port Joint Attack. This phase involves anti-landing operations consisting of 2 parts, transit interception and port attack. The transit interception operation will focus on attacking the Chinese Army's amphibious ships, and is the main means by which the Taiwanese Army will engage the enemy at sea. During the transit interception operation, the Taiwanese Army will prioritize the interception zone within 30 to 50 nautical miles east of the median line in the Taiwan Strait, when the Chinese amphibious ships are crossing. the Taiwanese Army will organize sea-based forces to implement long-range firepower blockades. The Army will mainly use large-caliber artillery and shore-to-ship missiles to attack the Chinese fleet. The Taiwanese Army believes that this type of collective interception and attack at sea cannot completely destroy the enemy's landing forces at sea, but it can cause significant losses, greatly reducing the pressure on subsequent anti-landing operations later. The firepower attack refers to the three-dimensional firepower of sea, land, and air attacking the landing fleet during anchoring and transfer periods in order to achieve the goal of destroying the enemy at the water's edge and on the beachhead. The Taiwanese Army believes that the stage from the transfer area to the landing beach is the weakest period of combat effectiveness for the landing force, so they must take advantage of this opportunity to inflict heavy damage and prevent the landing force from establishing a foothold on the beach. During the implementation of the interception of crossing and the joint attack on the landing area, the Navy presents a scene where the three armies of the Army, Navy, and Air Force work together. The Air Force's F-16, Mirage, and IDF fighters will use anti-ship missiles such as Harpoon or other precision-guided missiles or machine guns to strike Chinese ships. The Kidd-class destroyers, Chengkung-class frigates, Guanghu-6 and Chuojiang-class and Tajiang-class missile boats, the Haifeng fleet, and the Amping-class missile boats of the Coast Guard Administration will also use anti-ship missiles such as HF-23 to strike the Chinese Army's landing route. At the same time, the Taiwan Army will also use various types of artillery to suppress the firepower of the Chinese Army ships, gradually increasing the firepower density from far to near. It is reported that the Taiwanese Army has purchased a batch of the US M142 HIMARS multiple rocket launch system and the ATACMS tactical ballistic missile system that matches it. The ATACMS introduced by Taiwan this time is the M57 missile with a single warhead, with a range of about 300 kilometers and a warhead weight of 500 pounds. In terms of performance, the HIMARS is significantly superior to Taiwan's domestically developed Thunder 2000 in both range and reliability. If deployed on outlying islands, this rocket artillery system could not only threaten Chinese Army landing ships but also strike Chinese Army military bases in the mainland. Beachfront battle is a critical aspect of Taiwan's anti-landing operations. To this end, the Taiwanese Army has deployed numerous anti-tank barriers such as Dragon's Teeth, anti-airborne triangular forks, and reinforced concrete wave-absorbing blocks to block waterways and ports where the Chinese Army could possibly land, increasing the difficulty of the landing. Even if the landing forces successfully land, the Taiwanese Army's diverse offensive capabilities would be an insurmountable obstacle. Currently, the Taiwanese Army has formed a defensive system based on underground works, base fortifications, and fortress warfare to meet the requirements of subterranean works, base fortifications, and fortress warfare. These defensive works are very sturdy and have strong resistance to destruction, withstanding at least one direct hit from a 105mm shell. In previous Han Kuang military exercises, we often saw footage of old tanks such as the M60A3 and M48H Brave Tiger firing at sea targets on the beach, perhaps realizing that these grandfather-generation weapons were no match for China's modern tanks. The Navy has not only launched its own Clouded Leopard 105mm infantry fighting vehicle project, but also started purchasing about 100 American-made M1A2T main battle tanks to enhance its counterattack capabilities on the landing site. The M1A2T main battle tank is actually a customized version of the M1A2 Abrams main battle tank for Taiwan. Its overall performance is comparable to that of the M1A2. And it has the ability to compete with the Chinese Army's Type 99A main battle tank. If combined with the H-1W Super Cobra and a H-64E Apache armed helicopters for air support, the Taiwanese Army's future beachfront firepower would become one of the biggest obstacles in Chinese Army landing operation. In the history of warfare, the defending side cannot win by simply holding their ground, as they will often be unable to sustain the defense for long. Taiwan's small size and limited maneuvering space mean that the Taiwanese Army must launch counterattacks in a timely manner during anti-landing operations to have a chance to turn the tide. Typically, the Taiwanese Army will launch their counterattacks against the first wave of Chinese Army landing forces, breaking through their first-line defense and advancing towards their second-line defense. The counterattacks are mainly carried out by the Army, with support and coordination from the Navy and Air Force. Taiwan's counterattack operations are divided into partial and strategic total counterattacks. In a partial counterattack, the Taiwanese Army will deploy several armored and infantry brigades in the main defense direction, forming a local numerical advantage to eliminate the main force of the Chinese Army landing troops and regain military strategic points such as airports and ports. The strategic total counterattack is based on the partial counterattack, employing a combined air and ground warfare approach, using frontal and lateral assaults to penetrate the central area of the Chinese landing forces, intercepting follow-up landing forces. It can be seen that Taiwan's anti-landing operations have the intention of defending and counterattacking. In fact, the U.S. military has a contingency plan for the Taiwan Strait conflict, which includes a trap the enemy by feigning weakness strategy, which was to lure hundreds of thousands of Chinese army soldiers to land on Taiwan before blocking the Taiwan Strait and teaming up with the Taiwanese army to encircle and annihilate the Chinese army. This strategy can be considered cruel and insidious. Once successfully implemented, it will deal a heavy blow to the morale of the Chinese army. The following are the 4 stages of Taiwan's anti-landing operations, although some of them may be unrealistic. There are also many aspects that we should pay attention to and review. We should see that while the Chinese army is actively preparing for an attack on Taiwan, Taiwan's research and exercises related to anti-landing operations have never stopped. Although the Taiwanese army has various weaknesses today, there is little dispute that it is one of the world's army that most emphasis on anti-landing operations. Joint anti-landing operations are also a highlight of the annual Hanquang military exercise. In this year's exercise, the Taiwanese army targeted the anti-assault project of the Danshui River. During the exercise, the Taiwanese army quickly deployed an obstacle chain composed of explosives on the Danshui River. When the Chinese Army's Bison-class hovercraft landing craft broke through sea and air blockades and advanced into Taipei, the explosives will be detonated, destroying the target. In recent years, Hanquang exercises combat skill has been significantly improved compared to the past. Taiwan's anti-landing and anti-airborne operations capabilities have also been improved through repeated training. There are many examples in history of underestimating the enemy and suffering defeat, such as the Battle of Kinmen. Therefore, the Chinese army can only achieve reunification at the lowest cost by knowing oneself and the enemy, and being lenient in estimating the enemy. Do you think China will one day attack Taiwan? A yes, because it is one of their dreams and their leader's dream. B no, because the difficulty is too high, and it may destroy the foundation of the China in many ways. C no, because neighboring countries, including the United States, would support Taiwan, making it difficult to capture. D share your thoughts with us and leave your comment below. Thank you for watching.